What's up? What's up? Welcome back to Tell the Truth, episode 39, man. Last impressions. We got a lot to talk about. Training camp has come and gone at this point. They are back from St. Joe's in those horrible dorms. They are back at Kansas City practicing. They've had two preseason games, one in Jacksonville this past weekend. They were at home with the Detroit Lions. We had some headlines made because somebody decided to run the wrong route, and the other person has a funny voice, and we had some highlights made off of that as well.
hmm
But yeah, man, how you guys doing?
Doing good, man. Good to be alive. Oh,
Always another day, baby. Let's get it.
right.
Yes, sir.
Football's
Yes, sir.
almost back for sure now.
We so
You
close.
like,
Week zero's here, baby.
bruh.
I'm not gonna
You,
lie to you. I went outside and I was like, "Oh, is that a fall chill that I'm feeling?" It's not, because you go outside during the nighttime. It is during the summer. You feel like temperature's still warm. But nah, you go outside, get a little fall breeze coming in, man.
it's getting there. It's getting there. You can feel it,
Yeah, you can
especially
feel it, man. We
today.
got we got college football week 0 coming up this weekend, man.
Yeah,
CJ like, I'm hyped.
bruh. I'm so ready for some football, dog. It don't even make no sense right now. Love
Yes, sir.
baseball, love the Royals right now, but it ain't nothing like football season.
I thought you were sticking with the Royals are Royals pessimism until
Eh,
they went
You
to
know,
they've
you
turned it they've
know,
done so well that
Stay
you
on
gotta
that
admit it
side,
now.
DG.
you
Stay
know.
on that side.
Nah,
Nah,
when you win 70 games, and I wasn't expecting you to win 70
you
games,
know what I'm saying?
I can admit maybe I was a little bit harsh, just a little bit,
Just a tiny
you
bit.
know. But it was deserved. They lost 106 games last year.
This
Like,
ain't this ain't roster no more, DG. We ain't that
yeah,
team no more.
hey, it is what it is. We'll
You know what
get to
I'm
the
saying?
Royals.
Shout out to the Royal. We tied up right now, for real.
Right.
But yeah, so football in the air, a little bit of a chill coming through. Chiefs have two games on the belt, and they will be playing Thursday at home again, whereas the Chicago Bears will be coming to town. No Caleb Williams and no starters as per usual with Andy Reid in the third preseason game, and we'll get into that as far as what we're watching for specifically in that depth chart as these guys try to make their final push to the 53-man roster. Speaking of which, though, we have seen some guys move up and down as far as their stocks are concerned, make some plays, whether it was in training camp up in St. Joe or during the preseason as well, as far as the Jacksonville game was concerned. So, the one thing before we get into all of that, we kind of did have a little bit of an injury update today. During practice, Andy Reid ran through guys that have been kind of banged up to this point. Obviously, we've seen Justin Reed not practice at this point. Nick Bolton has been held out a few ones. Chris Jones has not participated in a game yet. Obviously, we had Watson, DBs, other guys in and out of the lineup to this point. But fortunately, according to Andy Reid, is that all those guys are expected to play week 1 for the Kansas City Chiefs opening night, except for Hollywood Brown. Is still dealing with that shoulder injury, and it looks like it's going to be up in the air for him. And we'll see if it's a week 2 return, a week 3 return. But it does sound like opening night versus the Ravens is ultimately going to be a little up in the air or doubtful, I should say. And then obviously Charles Omenihu coming back from the ACL injury will probably be the lone guy that will be put on IR. Knock on wood when those things come around. Anything as far as the injury front you guys want to highlight as far as that's concerned?
No, nothing too much. I mean, that we already don't know right now. I know Josh. Did you say Joshua Williams about his injuries today?
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah, but he said it, and he didn't say it was anything too crazy. So hopefully
yeah.
that stays that way.
Uh, yeah. Other than that, man, nothing really new that we didn't already know at this point. Uh, probably would expect. I know a lot of people are kind of trying to be optimistic as they can on the Hollywood Brown thing, but um, I think having some concerns about him being back week 2 could be given at this point. Just because we just don't know how that type of injury heals, and if the swelling can go or whatever. So just I would want people to kind of keep an open mind. You want guys to come back as quick as possible, but you also want guys to come back as healthy as possible at the same time too. So if it takes an extra week, I do think the Chiefs can manage if they have to through these first two games without him at this point. Although it'd be tough, but at the same time, we would like to have him come back for the foreseeable season or whatever instead of coming back and getting hurt instantly. So yeah, but that's just where I'm at with it with all the injuries and stuff. No big concerns for real right now.
No, nothing on that part. That Hollywood Brown, of course, to your point. I mean, I think it's kind of the situation, fortunately, to where we're at in the wide receiver room, which we'll get into from last year. It's upgraded, and we got a full showcase of Xavier Worthy, certainly against the Lions, both with Carson Wentz and Patrick Mahomes. But then what his speed brings to the table, ultimately, Rasheed Rice. Obviously, top of a conversation during the offseason. What is that suspension possibly could look like? Based on the court date, based on all the chatter that we've heard so far, doesn't seem like that suspension is going to be coming at the start of the season. So even if Hollywood Brown does miss week one, because of those two, because of obviously the tight end room, because of guys like Justin Watson who are still on this team, you expect that you'll still be in a good spot to attack their good defense, to certainly say the least. So yeah, that's as far as the injury front, kind of a quick rundown. And right off the top, man. Speaking of guys that we have been impressed with it, as far as offense is concerned, talking about the offensive risers, both throughout training camp and then also going into the actual preseason games as well. I'm going to start it off just getting the low hanging fruit out of the way. Kingsley Suamataia. I mean, he has stepped in. We kind of got to camp and didn't know, are him and Wanya going to be rotating reps? Are they going to be splitting? Is this going to be true competition? It felt like since day one that Kingsley was going to be the guy for the job, and he's pretty much held on to it to the entirety of this time throughout the month of August, and he's continued to show out in these games why he has. Detroit did not necessarily have the starters in, but he did a really good job versus the Jaguars, I thought. Again, I thought Mahomes was pretty comfortable back there for the snaps that he played. Kingsley's done a good job to this point, and the movement skills have been impressive to say the least. When you get him out on the edge, we saw it with a Worthy end around. I think that was when the backups were in, and just seeing him move out in space and still be able to pick off linebackers and DBs at the second level was impressive ability from Kingsley. And to this point, and I think he's performed adequately enough to say that I feel good about him being the left tackle, especially compared to what you dealt with last year and who else you have on the offensive line. So as far as offensive risers, you guys want to highlight, CJ, you want to go ahead and start this off for a guy that come to mind to this point?
I mean, Carson Steele is probably the biggest story out of all of camp so far. We knew running back 3 or /2 was going to be an issue. Not necessarily an issue, but a question mark for this team because we knew Jed McKinnon is still out there on the market, and we don't know what his status is if he wants to play again or not. Always you look for guys who can get cut or hurt in training camp, and obviously this is that week when obviously guys start getting those phone calls and they're going to figure out if they're going to be in their respective cities or not, and guys going to pack up their bags and move. So if a name definitely does hit the wire, I think they'll definitely be active and possibly bring a guy in here. But I think Carson Steele is pretty much solidified RB3 as of now for me. I know Clyde is dealing with his issues and health things off the field, and we're praying that he comes back sooner rather than later. But I think as of now, Carson Steele will be the offensive standout for sure so far.
DG, what about you? Anybody that stands out as far as offensive, the guys that have raised their profile to this point?
I mean, I think you said it, earlier about Kingsley really locking down that and proving to us that he can play that left tackle position and do it at a really high level. Been really impressed with a lot of his reps in the preseason, what he's kind of shown, even some of the negative stuff that he's shown when he's been beat on some reps or whatever. He's still able to like reset his feet and get back. I'm trying to think of the words and get back into the play or whatever and keep it from being such a negative play. That shows not only the athleticism that he has, but the some of the questions that we had about his maturity as far as playing in that spot. I think another guy too has been Jared Wiley as well. Even though it hasn't really shown in the preseason games as much, I think it's been pivotal that he's kind of taken over that tight end 3 role. Something that we initially thought Irv Smith Jr. might be brought in here to do at this point in time. But it seems as though they seem pretty comfortable with Jared Wiley being out there at the start of the season. So probably expect Irv Smith Jr. to be looking for a job after preseason here. But very impressed that he's been able to pick up the offense as well as he has in his rookie year, and being able to show the coaches that he can be trusted to going into the season to be on the 53.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. Certainly worth highlighting the effort that he's put together. Certainly training camp a little bit, like you said, not as much in the games, but we know what he brings to the table, and I think that we'll see him specifically featured in the red zone this year. I had two quick offensive risers for me that I want to mention: Ethan Driscoll and Drew Godric. I think both of those guys have built out well. Ethan Driscoll, first time here in Kansas City, rookie. UDFA, but he's a guy at tackle that's showing really good movement skills. Obviously built real well. I think he's like 6'6", 320-ish, and he has the ability maybe to develop as a tackle. And Chu Godric, a guy part of the international player program, never had played football until a few years ago, and he's been able to come in. I think you've seen a jump from what he was last year this time to what he is this year. And he could be somebody certainly that challenges for a practice squad spot and allows Luis Rees-Zammit to have the international player practice squad spot that'll allow you to have an extra spot there. So I think those two guys are worth mentioning as well. And I do want to also give a shout out, because I'd be remiss if I didn't. Shout out to Cornell Powell, man. Had a nice touchdown here in the preseason game. A dot from Chris Olodokun. Shout out to Chris for that as well.
All practice squad pal.
Yes, all practice squad pal, man.
All practice squad right there, baby.
A really good play by Cordell Powell.
Clemson
man.
going crazy right now.
I gotta say, that was a dot from Chris too. Oh man.
I ain't never seen CP run that fast.
But yeah,
I will say that's kind of been a bright spot too, is Oladukin. I think I said that right. I hope I said that right. But him being able to kind of secure that backup position, or QB3 between him and Book. He's looked a lot better this year in some of his reps as well.
Ian Book.
Ian Book.
Look, that's the thing. I can't tell if he looks better this year or he looks so much better in comparison to Ian Book. I'm not sure. But he's always had some skills, a little bit of his.
Ian Book can go, bro. Just turning your iPad, son. Turning your iPad, bro. You ain't got to do that game. Turn.
Hey, coach. Hey, man, coach
we got a whole second half where the Ian Book snaps coming right at you.
Here your trash bag. Go get your stuff. Go get your
stuff. That's gonna be something.
But
no, yeah. Shout out to Chris. I mean, he's going to be the practice squad quarterback, and I think there's a certain designation that they've expanded so that he doesn't have to be on the roster, but he could actually have,
He might be.
We'll see what exactly.
He might be.
Trizzy, he can't even work with you the way he be acting. He don't even deserve to do that, gang. Nah, bro, you better than that.
So you can't even teach the kids?
Nope. Go sell insurance. We don't need you influencing the youth at all. I don't need you lying in class. I was playing in the NFL. No, you didn't. Stop lying. You weren't playing in the league. No, you didn't.
Before we get off the risers, we'll also have to mention Carson Wentz. I think he's come in and established himself as obviously clearly quarterback too, and I think he's actually shown very, very well to this point, which you got to be happy about. You want to have a backup quarterback that you feel like you can trust, and I think everybody in Chiefs Kingdom feels as good, if not better, about him than we have about Blaine Gabbert or other quarterback twos in the past, outside Chad Henne, of course. So shout out to Carson Wentz, come in and play very well. But speaking of obviously offensive fallers, outside of just Ian Book, some of the guys that we came into training camp having question marks about or just wanted to see step up in a certain role, obviously, probably the most relevant name here, I think, has to be Kadarius Toney. There was a point in camp in which he was practicing consistently. He was getting a lot of different run with different places, doing a little bit of running back stuff. And then he got hurt again. And then he was kind of ineffective. He's been running behind as far as like third string during the preseason games. There's nothing much there that you can go off of and feel great about at this current point if you're trying to get Kadarius Toney on this roster outside of, what they've invested into this aspect. So now you have to ask yourself, is he going to be a guy that can make an impact in this last preseason game and try and stay on the roster? and that's going to be a massive question mark for him specifically. But outside of Kadarius Toney, is there anybody as far as the offense that you feel like has hurt their stock, or you've been a little bit maybe underwhelmed with their performance so far in the training camp in the first two preseason games?
Probably Clyde, I guess you could say at this point. I
He ain't
still
really been
think,
out there, honestly.
yeah, I guess you could say he's still. I mean, he's probably still gonna make the roster, but
Yeah, he's
at
making
the
the
same
roster.
time, you kind of just been wondering what's been going on with his reps and stuff like that. I understand all the behind the scenes stuff with the PTSD and stuff like that. So got to handle things like that, and I understand it. So take your time, Clyde, or whatever. But at the same time, you know, losing those reps, man, it's
Carson
tough.
Steele season, baby.
Yeah.
Probably
Carson Steele has been,
Deneric Prince, if anybody, because I thought he would be the
mm,
guy that would step into RB2. Obviously, we
yeah,
had high hopes for him last year.
me too.
Big body, physical guy, and especially with Clyde going down, like DG
Mm,
said, I figured that'd be an opportunity for him to step up. And
yeah,
nothing wrong with Carson Steele getting a chance, but I figured that'd be Deneric Prince's spot. So if anybody on offense, he'd probably be the one that probably lost a good opportunity because RB2's been open since Jet McKinnon said he
yeah,
wasn't coming back. So it'd
yeah,
probably be Deneric Prince for me.
Okay. Yeah, and Deneric started off, kind of getting a lot of that work, and then did not necessarily impress in the first preseason game, and that opened the door a little bit more for Carson Steele, who I think has impressed not just specifically as a running back, but as a fullback, as a tight end, returning kicks and on special teams, and ultimately that's why it feels like at this point that Carson Steele certainly has secured his roster spot. But when somebody's door opens, somebody else's has to close to a certain extent, and CEH, due to a lot of different things that he's dealt with, whether it is injury, whether it's the PTSD aspect of it that he talked about in the press conference, whatever the reasons are, to this point, it feels like he's allowed possibly Carson Steele to pass him up. And there's a door open for Deneric Prince still, I think, with an impressive game next week as well. Um, I don't think there's anybody other than that. We'll get into kind of the quagmire that is the wide receiver room, later on as we talk about this last preseason game. But I don't think there's anybody else that really has hurt their stock significantly as we go into this last preseason game either. As such, we can flip over to the other side of the ball, the defensive side, of course, with people that have some people that have obviously a high draft pick attached to them, whether it's Felix and Duke Azama, guys that we were really expected and highly excited to see. Jaden Hicks coming in specifically. Somebody said it was the best pick of the actual, Kansas City Chiefs 2024 draft by Brett Veach. Anybody else, I'll say for you guys that really has stood out on the defensive end that you want to highlight as we've gone through training camp in the first two games?
go ahead, Sid.
Jaden Hicks, Shamari Connor for me. Obviously, we know our cornerback room is going to be a little lack of talent when you lose a guy like L'Jarius Sneed. You don't replace an all-pro corner like that. So that's a big loss for this defense. But I think we make up that talent in the safety room. And I think the excitement we had last year for the linebacking group is the same excitement we have now this year for the safety room. When you have guys like Brian Cook coming off injury, who's responded well, looked like he hasn't lost a step all camp. Justin Reed said he's going to play week 1, so we love to get that update from him. And Jaden Hicks and Shamari Connor are two of the more versatile guys on this team. I think if Coach Merritt or Coach Bag ask them to do anything, they're willing to do it. So if they'll play in the box if need be, and we're going to need them a lot after week 1 because we're going to see a lot of two tight end sets with Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely. So it's going to be a big week for those two guys. So I know their reps are going to be high, and obviously with our cornerback room not being as prepared as we want it to be, Josh Whelan was dealing with injuries even though he's going to play, and Jalen Watson was dealing with his injuries as well. So it's going to be a big week for the middle of the field. Preparing for week 1 with Lamar Jackson. He doesn't really throw the ball outside the numbers too much. Not to say he can't, but his money zones is in the middle of the field when they run the football and play action. So Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely are going to get a lot of targets, and I expect to see a lot of Brian Cook, Justin Reed, and obviously Shamari and Jaden have to play a lot as well. So those two guys have stood out a lot to me. Jaden made a lot of good tackles, open field plays on Saturday for Detroit. And during camp, when we went up to St. Joe, I saw Shamari make a play almost every time I was up there. So those are probably the two guys on defense that have stood out the most to me so far, for sure.
Yep, absolutely. DG, what about you?
Yeah, for me, I mean, I guess mine is obvious, but I've been super impressed with what FAU has been able to kind of put on tape as far as this preseason goes and what he's been able to show as far as that off season training camp that he had or training that he had with Tamba Ali. You can clearly see uh, there was things that were worked on in the off season that got his game up to speed to where it is right now. A lot of good reps on Saturday that he showed, being able to bend that corner, get off the edge. Still it's a little slight, I would say a little slight. Trying to
Got
find the word.
bend that knee, baby. Got bend that
Yeah,
knee. It's tough.
a little slight deficiency in that in his his power moves at this point in time, and I think that may just come with more reps in this league. But
Mhm.
as time goes on, but man, he had one rep off the I think it's on a third down or something like that, or whatever, where he bent the corner and just literally interrupted the whole play, disrupted the whole play, or whatever. Made so I think who was it? Sudfield was the quarterback for the Lions.
Nate Sudfeld.
Yeah, made
I
him
think it was by the time, yeah.
had to make him rush his throw, forcing incompletion or whatever. So just seeing good from him, man. I know a lot of people got a lot of pressure on him as far as coming into this season, being that number one draft pick of last year. But I think we gotta we might have a great tandem on our hands in him and George Karlaftis here for the next foreseeable future here. So
He had a good
excited
TFL
for that
too
for
on Saturday as
you. Yeah,
well.
yeah, yeah. Mhm.
He
Got
did.
off the block, pushed his hand, ripped through. So I know they had a lot of high expectations for him, but I think the clamoring for him as if like I'm not mad at he was taken first round. I liked him as a prospect. He was obviously the Big 12 Defensive Player of the Year. He could be a speed rusher like DG said. But I think the masses thinking just because you're taken in the first round, like I
Mhm.
like Felix on the roster as a prospect. I wanted him on the team. I just don't think he was a first round like type of player. I didn't have a first round grade on him. Good
Mhm.
player, and
Mhm.
I'm not mad that we drafted him. I just think the spot is kind of like Clyde. Just because you're taken in the first round doesn't mean you're a first round talent. You were just taken at the end of the first round. Because obviously,
Mhm.
like anything between pick 30 and like 40 are second round, first round grades for a lot of teams. So they're kind of like in limbo. So just because you were taken with that one attached to your name doesn't necessarily mean he's a guaranteed first round lock. Because most people didn't have him going that high. Most people had him in the second round. So
So,
I
yeah.
think the grading scale and like the eagerness that people have for him just to be calm and relaxed. And I think, like DG said, he'll burst out in his second year, just like George did. George had a slow rookie year. Second year, he busted out, had double digit sacks. Not to say Felix is going to do that, but I expect a big jump from him given the
Mhm.
offseason work he got with Tamba. More time with Cullen, more time with Spags. They know what his weaknesses and strengths are. I think he'll be a good, impactful situational rusher for us this year. But I think the expectation just need to be timid, just not based off his first round grade for sure.
Yeah, and look, you talk about it specifically. I would even say 25 to like 50. I mean, your teams
Toss up.
usually, yeah,
Yeah.
teams normally don't have more than 20, 23, maybe 22, like first round true grades as far as they're going into a draft with prospects are concerned. So you're picking 30, you're going to end up taking some guys that really are second rounders. The fortunate thing about it is Reach has generally done a good job at being able to convert those guys and get good value at them. Obviously, applies with Trent McDuffie and George Kaloptis first and foremost. So we will see what it is with Felix. I think there's a lot of development that still needs to happen there. There was better get off as far as the snap was concerned from what I saw, in person. I thought that he was timing up fairly okay, but still a little bit too inconsistent for my liking. Again, the speed and the hand usage I think was good. I think the work that he's been doing with Tom Ali is paying off. It's just for he doesn't necessarily have a lot of pop in his hands right now, and that's it. If you can't necessarily threaten with power, there are a lot of reasonable left tackles and tackles in the league in general that are just going to push you around the pocket, and that's something that he's going to have to learn. Whether it is just inside counter moves in general, but also having to play with a little bit more power. But again, it's a developmental process for him certainly, and we'll see how it continues to move forward from that aspect. But Jaden Hicks certainly has been able to have a few good moments. Definitely agree with it. He's one of the guys I described as he's not going to give up a lot of yards after contact. It feels like every time he gets his hands on somebody, that ends up is going to stop it, and that's just the long and the short of it. You know, like he's just going to stop you in your tracks from that aspect. Um, I also, there's been other guys that have been kind of flashed for me this past preseason game, specifically Truman Jones. I thought was really good. He obviously had a really nice tackle for loss, which he jumped, I believe, on the. I think they ran a jet sweep at him, and he just jumped it. But I thought I was pretty impressed with his pass rush work. Obviously, he had a little bit of knee injury coming out of that game. hopefully we get to see him on Thursday. He would be one of the people certainly to watch, and was mentioned in the chat as well by Chris. I mean, Curtis Jacobs from Penn State, the UDFA, played very well in my opinion. Been able to flash a few times, getting some tackles for loss, and I think deserves mention as far as this is concerned. And specifically as we go through this entire cornerback battle, which we'll talk a little bit later on as far as the roster construction is concerned, it's it's going to be interesting to see how many safeties they keep, how many corners they keep, and how that will build out what Spags wants to do on defense this year. As he said today, nobody really has taken up that cornerback two spot behind Drake McDuffie, and that's going to be a key thing to watch moving forward. So transition over as far as guys defensively that maybe have left a little bit to be desired. For me, I can say Joshua Williams or just Jalen Watson to have one of those guys step up, but truthfully, they've been in and out of lineup, so I don't know how much I really want to put on them. I will say I wanted to see a little bit more from Cam Jones. I think he's been a little bit underwhelming to this point. I don't think it's anything, alarm raising. He's still going to be a depth linebacker, at best, but I would like to have seen a little bit more building on what you saw kind of towards the end of the season for him from this year. Anything as far as defensive fallers to you guys in this point in camp in the first two preseason games?
I'll say some of the guys probably up the middle, and like Farrell and Fabian, those guys. Not saying that they haven't put bad tape on there, just nothing has kind of impressed you at this point or jumped off the film, or whatever. But still, you still need depth pieces at this point. So I know it's going to be a kind of a battle for some of those guys to even make the roster, and some of them might end up even making the practice squad at this point. But yeah, those are really only, I guess, fallers, I guess you say, or whatever. I haven't been too badly impressed with the defense or anything like that this whole preseason. Everything's been kind of vanilla at this point, so you can't really put too much stock into everything you're seeing out there. So
yeah, I think the guys are they're trying to just get ready for week one. Honestly, I haven't really seen anybody pop out off screen. Honestly, outside of the young guys and like the DB room, but up front, D line, front seven wise, Nick Bolton's been there. Drew Tranquil's made plays, but on the D line group is just Chris Jones sets the tone. We know how that's going to be week one, but maybe Malik Herring had a couple flashes on Saturday that I like to see. So that's good. But he's obviously a depth situational rusher for us. Not really a guy that's going to get plenty of snaps, but George looks like himself. Mike Daniel looks like himself. I think the guys are just kind of just ready for week one, and you didn't really see too much. And Spags, we know it's not going to give away anything because it's preseason. But as far as the role players, like you have Fabian, Neil Farrell, Turt, nobody really stood out for me, honestly, through camps. I think we're kind of just ready for week one now, just to get guys. I think health is just the biggest thing for us. Analyzing preseason really doesn't really entertain or really get us hyped up. We're kind of just get guys healthy, get us to week one, and then let's get it rolling.
Yeah, and that's really the key thing, especially on the defensive end. It's just about making sure those guys are healthy, making sure Chris Jones is out there and ready to go. Obviously, Charles Minhue further down into the season as he's working back from the ACL injury, getting Nick Bolton back, getting Justin Reed back, your leaders on the defense, and make sure they're in place for when you're obviously kicking the games off that matter. I feel still comfortable about the defense. I still have some question marks as far as that, but we'll get into those a little bit later. So the fun piece before we get into a little bit deeper as far as the 53 man is concerned was that coming out of last Saturday's preseason game, of course, the Lions, of course, Patrick Mahomes decided to finally pull it out, do the behind the back in an actual game to Travis Kelce, and it lit the world on fire. Everybody was talking about Caleb Williams, and Mahomes was like, "Oh, okay. Well, let me show you guys something to go ahead and get trending again." But shout out to Patrick Mahomes for pulling that out. Very funny story between him and Travis Kelce, lying about who was in the wrong on that play specifically, and Mahomes saying that he was bad about Travis Kelce running the wrong route. What was your guys' reaction when you initially saw this?
It was shocking. Just because you knew they had talked about it and you had seen it in training camp and videos and stuff like that, and him doing it there. But to actually pull this in a game, and I'm glad he actually just did it in preseason and not in a regular season game or something. Not saying
I don't ever want to see this again.
Yeah,
One and
yeah.
one and one
This
time
is
only.
one and done. Yeah. Hopefully, this is it. You got your highlight. Everybody can, put it in their little clips or whatever on YouTube or whatever. But yeah, I'm good on never seeing this again. But it was very impressive, and how
It was
accurate
cool to
he
see.
was with it. It was very, very, very impressive. He's a freak of nature, man. That's why he's the best quarterback in the league. Just he makes the difficult things look easy at this point. So, you know, shout out to him, man.
That's his white whale, being able to throw the ball behind his back, which is hilarious. I would not be surprised if you do see it in a regular season game, just because I think he wants to do it badly, and
Mhm.
he's somebody that chases pushing the envelope, and obviously so is Travis Kelsey, as we saw with his laterals and stuff. So I would not be surprised if he does decide to do it, and maybe it could be against the Raiders. As, as Chuck suggests
That'd
there.
be sensational.
That would be that would be something. Oh man, if he did it versus the Raiders, everybody be going crazy, especially after because that's
The
something
Kermit, the Kermit.
I don't even know if
Listen,
we actually got a chance to talk about it fully about the Kermit puppet that they decided to pull out of training camp, which hilarious that you decided to do that at training camp for sure. Uh, but yeah, so shout out to the Raiders, man. Can't wait to see them twice this season, and certainly in the stadium in which we won the Super Bowl and celebrated in that locker room. Had a good time
right.
there. So as we move forward, looking into it, August 27th is going to be cut down day for the final 53 man, and it's going to be fascinating to see who exactly makes the roster. And this will kind of also play into who you're looking for as far as the actual end of the season or last preseason game, I should say, end of the preseason. But I did put together my 53 man going into that last preseason game, and this is more so just so we can all see the names at this point. But um, as far as you guys going into this last preseason game, position battles, things to watch, what are you going to be looking for? As this will obviously be a backups type of game, and guys on the back end of the roster trying to secure those final spots. Whether it is the back end of the wide receiver room, which obviously Justin Ross, Sky Moore, Biko Hardman, Kadarius Tony, Nico Remigio, all big topics of conversation. Dave Tope said he's going to be pounding the table for Nico Remigio. The linebacker room with Cochran, Jacobs, Cam Jones, and Christensen. Certainly, cornerback room. We'll see how much we see of the actual starters. Najee Johnson kind of mixed in with the starters and then also was in with the third team, which was interesting to me. But guys like Calvin Joseph, and then also the safety room. Deion Bush probably holding down that last spot. But a guy like Christian Roland Wallace, who's made a nice impression, made some plays to end the game last weekend. Can he, build on top of that as well? But so I'll start out with you, DG. What are you looking for as far as this last preseason game is concerned, and how it would build out the end of this roster, I should say.
Yeah, I think this is a point for all those guys that are on fringe kind of roster spots. Um, it's your last shot, last chance to prove anything to the staff. If you should make this roster at this point. I know guys like Remigio and trying to think of another guy that's probably on that list. I guess you could say a guy like Lucas Niang or somebody like somebody who's kind of fighting for a backup spot at this point. This is it, man. You got to put together some good film. Play this game like it's your last at this point. They could possibly but definitely want to see some of those guys go out there and do some impressive things. Put some highlights together, man. Give us something, to really talk about that it makes us want to keep you on this team for the foreseeable future at this point. So um, that's about it. All I expect to see from this game. I know the backups are gonna get a lot of run. You probably see a lot of the four stringers. Probably see a lot of Ian Book. uh, so
I would
Can't
not
wait.
be. I would not be watching Ian Book.
Can't wait. Can't wait.
shout out to all the people who are going out there and gonna suffer through that on Thursday night. You're a better fan than I am, so uh, good luck with that. Take the kiddos and have a good night at Arrowhead, man. This is that time where you can you can actually take the kids and not have to worry about really watching the game and enjoy
This is the
watching
unfortunate
them
game
run around.
where if you did want to take your family, because I know the tickets are very expensive for all NFL teams, but even more so when your team is winning, like the Chiefs, this is the game to get out to. So I have two
Yeah.
extra tickets. So if anybody wants them, hit my DM. I can slide them to you for sure because I will not be attending, like DG said. But if anybody who's to look at, it's probably the same battle we said earlier. Carson Steele, Deneric Prince, who's fighting for that RB2/RB3 spot because Clyde's status is up in the air. So, however, I think Carson Steele has had two really good games in the preseason. So I was excited to see can Prince go out there, like DG said, have some splash plays, make a big run, make a touchdown to get back in there. Um, Ian Book is definitely going to turn the ball over. He's so bad. God, he sucks. Um, he make and I've been calling him K Klubnik. K Klubnik, I apologize. You ain't even that bad. Like Ian Book is trash. Jesus Lord.
Mhm.
Um, Other positions would be see most of the DBs. I don't really think it's like a big debate. I think all of them are going to make the roster in some capacity. I think Najee Johnson makes his team. I don't think that's even a debate because obviously he knows the playbook better than almost any of the DBs on the team, and he was here last year, so he knows what to do. As far as the receivers, I think Nico's on the roster. I think he's a lock. I don't think he's assigned and bring a guy back who's been in 3 Super Bowls, a 3-time champ, who's been in any nobody in that room has been in bigger moments than him in that receiver room. Like nobody can say how many big playoff moments, big Super Bowl wins, comeback plays. He's been here for everything through this whole entire run. So I think Nico's on the roster for sure, just for veteran leadership alone. And then I think it really comes down like those last two guys, those last two spots. It's probably between those four: Nico, Sky, Justin Ross, and KT. Two out of that four is going to make the team, and the other two are maybe be on roster and practice squad, and one maybe gets cut. So I think that's kind of the interesting point to see who makes it. If I had to bet my money on it right now, those two spots, I would pick Sky for one, and the other one would be I want to say Nico, but I think that'd be too much. Just smaller receivers. I'll probably go Sky and Justin Ross. If I had to pick and put my money on it right now, those are the last two, 6-7. The 6-7 spots. Yeah, it'd be Sky and Justin Ross for me if I had to pick two.
It is funny to me that we went through the whole they're never doing 7 wide receivers again, and we ended up right back here because the room is so full because of Hollywood Brown having the question mark. We've just ended up right back at 7 wide receivers, so it is what
Yep.
it is. But I understand why we have, and so that kind of kicks off what my question was going to be because I have a few roster questions. Just want to run down with you guys quickly and see where your heads are at, but certainly as far as if we go with the premise that it feels like Hollywood Rice, Xavier Worthy, Justin Ross, and Miko Hardman is the solidified four, as CJ just answered. DG, who are you stamping for those last two spots right now, and who would you have on the outside looking in?
So hold on. So you're saying receiver room?
Yeah.
First, 4,
Well,
5.
okay. I gotta go through the whole thing. So I know Hollywood, Rasheed, Xavier, Justin Watson. Oh, Guy Moore. If it was up to me, I'm sorry. Kadarius Tony is cut at this point. I just don't see.
You ain't getting no arguments out of nobody.
Yeah, I just don't see what the. Yeah, I don't see what the point of what keeping him at this point would be. It just feels like that relationship is kind of coming to an end and time to kind of move on from it or
So yeah,
whatever. I really feel like as far as the receiving position, he doesn't provide you a whole bunch. Maybe special teams and being a weapon, I guess you could say, as far as run game and screens and stuff like that. But
Mm-hmm.
I just don't see him as a full time receiver out there. Being able to run routes at this point. So um, I put Remigio, Ross. He said 7. Is that 6?
that's 7, but you don't have Miko.
Oh, and Miko. Yeah, of course, Miko. Miko's of course as well. So I think probably Kadarius, and if push comes to shove, maybe a Justin Ross is on the outside looking in, or whatever at this point. That'd be my pick.
Yeah, I understand. I think it's difficult to weigh because you're weighing special teams value versus what they see in training camp versus the preseason games versus body type, which obviously is a huge thing for Justin Ross. I mean,
Mhm.
on my prediction, I had Ross and Sky Moore as the last two guys for that spot. I had Nico, kind of in practice squad. So
Mhm.
Kadarius Toney is a trade guy for me. So I think Nico has to show out in this last preseason game to push one of those other two off the roster.
Yeah.
But if Justin Ross has a good game, I think he can solidify his spot. I think Sky Moore because he has 2 more years left, and he knows the system, and you saw him run with the ones at times. I think
Mhm.
that he's in a good position to make it onto a roster. And yeah, that top five, I think for me is going to be locked in. They didn't bring back Miko just to cut him as well.
Yeah.
Um, so wide receiver room aside, kind of the other question, a little bit of question at the interior offensive line. Maybe CJ Hanson's on the practice squad. I don't think that there's anything too much to him and all about as far as that's concerned. The Lucas Niang versus Drew Godric and Ethan Driscoll conversation is something that's interesting. I think Lucas is safe, but if he has a disaster of the game, then I suppose that's possible. I don't know.
Oof.
Um, yeah, it's interesting. Um,
Good luck.
the my question for you guys is a little bit more worth talking about. I think. Do you think that CEH is safe on this team? And if you do think that he's safe on this team, do you think that Deneric Prince can push them to try and have 4 running backs on this roster? Or do you think that that could be a place or I should say this a different way. Do you think Deneric Prince has to have a really good game on Thursday to push them to have 4 running backs on the roster?
I think
Nah,
Clyde
not really.
is. Yeah, I think Clyde is safe in and only in the aspect that he knows the playbook at this point in time, and he
Mhm.
knows the tendencies of this offense as well. It's kind of hard to get rid of a guy that's a veteran in this league now that's uh, played in big time games as far as Super Bowls and stuff like that, and been in playoffs and stuff. So um,
Clyde's a
I
long
love
term
the
guy.
I love the narrative. I love the narrative what he's been able to bring, but I don't know if he has enough time to push Clyde, or push for this team to have 4 running backs at this point. It's just gonna be tough to keep because now it becomes a number game. Like
Mhm.
you can only keep 53. So now we gotta cut here and cut there, and it's just not enough
It's tough.
spots, man. Yeah. So.
Three tight ends. I mean, if they decide to steal in this fullback spot, it's a
Mhm.
possibility. Maybe if they decide to do that, but then we're keeping 7 receivers. Do we keep one less lineman? So it's a Deneric Prince. More than likely, it's looking like between him and Carson Steele, one of them fighting for RB3 and the other one be on practice squad.
Mhm.
If they kept them both on the roster, that wouldn't shock me either. Just because, like we said, we don't know what Clyde's situation is. So I think that Clyde situation may be the biggest domino of if he's ready week one, then Deneric or Carson, you'll probably go to practice squad. If Clyde can't go week one, then they'll both be active. But you got to have 3 RBs going into a game versus the Ravens. So I think Clyde kind of holds the cards for that room for sure to see what his health status is.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think that's perfectly fair. To me, I do feel like Carson has solidified his spot in the roster. You've just seen too much versatility from him being able to run the ball. I think you've seen too much versatility from him at fullback, being able to return kicks and special teams. I think that he has been able to secure his roster spot from that aspect. And Deneric Prince, I think that he's probably right on that bubble. I mean, if he has a good game, I think he could push on his way on there, and maybe they have to keep an extra offensive player and make it 26 to 24 as I had it. I don't know. It's going to be very tight from that aspect between him, kind of the fourth tight end option, the seventh wide receiver option, the CJ Hansen as the last offensive line option as well. It's going to be fascinating to see how they build this out. It's early if they want to save an extra roster spot to try and acquire somebody as well. We'll see. Cut down day, you never know what running back could shake loose that you feel confident in bringing in. And they will certainly have their eye out, as they should, in my opinion, to see if anybody does shake free. But on the defensive end, as we go into the last preseason game and barrel towards the cut down day, I think the defensive line room is fairly set. I think the question mark kind of comes in Neil Farrell Jr. versus Fabian Lovett versus Matt Dickerson. Maybe a little bit Malik Herring, but I think because Malik Herring really is this team's fourth edge at this point, he's got to kind of be on the roster, at least until Charles who comes back. Obviously, tough BJ Thompson dealing with the offseason issue that he did. And he's been, working back, but nothing. He's not going to be a factor here for right now. But from you guys' perspective, Neil Farrell Jr., Fabian Lovett, Matt Dickerson, really those three guys, how are you kind of handicapping that, roster race, I guess, for lack of a better term? Any one of those three stand out to you, and who do you want to see trying to have a really good game to try and push for the roster?
Yeah, probably be between Fabian and
Fabian,
Neil.
yeah, it'll
What? So
probably.
Matt Dicker? What? Y'all not loving Matt Dickerson?
We
They
seen
love
we see what
they
Mac
love
Dickerson.
they like Mac Dickerson. We don't, but if I would not be shocked if Matt Dickerson made the roster. Joe Cullen likes him. Obviously, Spag does because high leverage moments he played last year. I don't know why, but he did. So we have a lot of guys on this roster who we shake our heads at when they get on the field, but they're still out there. So he's one of those guys. If it's between me, I'm picking Fabian Lovett. The upside, the height. You can't teach length and long arms. I think his height can come into play end of the season when it comes down to third down, getting your hands up, batted down passes and that sort. I think he would be a more beneficial team on the D line group than the other two. But if I had my guts telling me they're going to pick Matt Dickerson just because he knows the playbook, he's comfortable, they know him, they put him out there in big moments, and he somewhat produced. I don't know, but what that means. But if it's me, I'm picking Lovett, but they're probably going to pick Dickerson, so I'm not going to get my hopes up. So unfortunately, Matt Dickerson.
Yeah. I think this is a situation where if either one of these three guys does have a standout game, then I think they could push their way on the roster. I can see the argument for any one of these three guys, and you pretty well laid it out, CJ. Right now, I lean towards Neil Farrell because they had the 6th round pick. I actually thought he played pretty well against the Lions. We saw a little bit of his snaps later on in the season, specifically that Week 18 game versus the Chargers. He actually flashed a few times. I thought that was a good showing for him on tape. So I think Neil probably has a little bit of an edge right now, but Matt Dickerson's experience, obviously, the fact that they love him for God knows what reason, does help him. And I think Fabian probably, like you said, has the most upside, and certainly would love to see him get on the team. So that's kind of a 3-horse race where if one of those guys shows out, then I think they got a shot. So moving on from that, the linebacker room is kind of fascinating to me. Obviously, we know who the top three are. Jack Cochran was working in for the mic when Nick Bolton wasn't there. I expect that he's solidified as a linebacker 4 at this point, but you kind of got three guys that are up in the air after that, in Curtis Jacobs, Cam Jones, and Cole Christensen. Christensen is a guy that's been here. Cam Jones was here last year as well. Curtis Jacobs is a new guy to UDFA. Those three guys, anything that you guys feel strongly as far as those guys, or is it kind of, hey, let's see who has a really good game, and maybe one of you guys can push your way onto the roster and secure a spot?
It's probably looking like a 4th game spot. I mean, Curtis Jacobs flashed a lot in camp from what I saw. He was always around the ball making plays. Obviously, Cam Jones has the athletic ability. He's been here. He's probably out of all the secondary linebackers, he knows the system just as good as Jack Cochran does. So he played a lot of big moments for us last year when we had our injuries in the linebacker room. So if I had to pick, it would probably be Cam Jones. But I think if anybody would take it from me, it'd be Curtis Jacobs for me, just because he's flashed with athletic ability for sure, and I think they like that speed from him.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I've advocated for Curtis Jacobs, so I hope he can continue some of those flashes that we saw from him to start the camp, and then also a little bit in the game versus the Lions as well. So DB room, kind of a lot going on in the back end. Obviously, we know the battle between Nazi and Joshua Williams and Jalen Watson for that cornerback 2 spot, and Kelvin Joseph has also worked in there too, but he didn't really get much run with the ones, or really, I think, a lot with the twos during that Lions game either. So between kind of Kelvin Joseph, Kamal Haddon, Nick Jones, Christian Roland Wallace is a little bit of a corner safety hybrid. Obviously, we know about Deion Bush and his special teams value. Yeah, it feels like Iko Boyado just isn't even, close to this conversation, which is something to be said for how, these DBs have performed to this point. First of all, do you guys feel like Deion Bush is a lock for this roster and makes it 5 safeties? And second of all, who gets that 5th or slash 6th, kind of cornerback spot if it is 5 safeties ultimately on this roster behind Trent, Nazi, Joshua, and Jalen for you guys?
I definitely think that Deion Bush is probably It's probably a lock for this team. If even if he doesn't make the 53, I'm pretty sure he's probably
Yeah, he'll
going to
be
be
on
on the
practice
practice
squad for
squad
sure.
for
Yeah, for
sure.
sure.
So
Yeah.
I don't see the Chiefs getting rid of him at all. As
No.
far as the cornerback position, probably I guess the fringe guys would be like a Nick Jones. Um, I could see him making it just because of the experience of last year and being on this team. I'm kind of not really thrilled that Kamal Hayden, really didn't show us anything in this preseason, but it's still early, very early on in his career. So maybe he can be a practice squad guy, sit down there and learn for a little bit as well. Too, I don't see the Chiefs just kind of cutting him and moving on from him either. Maybe just needs a little bit more time to develop at this point in time. So, um, yeah, it's probably I think it's between probably Joseph and Nick Jones at this point for that last kind of spot. I think Nazi is a lock to make this team as well too.
Yeah, I think it's
See,
pretty much down to probably those three. Nick Jones. I think Najee's on the roster, obviously, with Jaden and Jay Will and Trent. I think the safety room pretty much solidified. Dion goes to practice squad. The four are probably going to be on the day one roster. Jaden, Chamari, Brian, and Jay Reed are going to be out there for starting versus the Ravens. And then the DB spot, if I had to pick one, it would probably be Kelvin Joseph. He's the one that's flashed, probably been the most consistent one out of that group
Yeah.
since camp, and obviously what we've seen during the first two preseason games. Obviously, a lot can change on Thursday against Chicago, and guys are going to be fighting for those fringe spots. But if I had to pick a DB right now, it would probably be Kelvin. I think he's probably been the most one that's been the most consistent or flashed the most out of all those secondary DBs for sure. So I think it's going to be Trent, Josh, Jalen, Nazi, Kelvin Joseph would probably be the one for me. Then after that, whoever offers the most special team ability, whoever they prefer. So if they prefer that to be Nick Jones, cool. If they prefer that to be Boydo, if that's the case, maybe, or Hayden, whoever. I think that if I had to pick one out of those three, it'd probably be Hayden. I think they like his length, his obviously frame and what they drafted him. And I think we like big corners and we think we can develop him in this system, especially Coach Merritt and Coach Spags and what they've done with bigger corners. So I think they probably hold on to him and see what he can turn out to be with coaching and development on practice squad, like DG said. So I think Hayden's probably the one that probably get the last spot, but I definitely think Kelvin Joseph has earned the right to be the fifth corner for sure.
yeah, and look, they've done a lot of work. I think with having Kamal work both inside and outside. Like they've done a lot of work in the slot with him, which he's a little bit more of an outside build of a corner, which has been interesting to me. But yeah, I mean, I have Dion Bush currently on the roster. I think the fact that they're listing Jamar Connor at corner and obviously used him a lot in the nickel is not a coincidence in a lot of respects. That you're going to see a lot of safety looks, and I think that that's going to end up pushing five safeties onto this roster. And I think that they'll probably be comfortable with a guy like Christian Wallace being technically the sixth safety on practice squad that could be called up at times, but that's going to shorten the cornerback room as a result. And I think it's only going to allow Kevin Joseph really to get on this team, and it's going to be tough for Nick Jones or a guy like Hiko Boyado to try and push it onto the team. And I think one of those guys would have to have a really standout game to change things from that perspective, at least in my personal opinion as well. So that's a little bit as far as the roster rundown. Matt Ariza has secured the punting spot, done a good job. James Winchester had the issue with his shoulder. Doesn't sound like it's going to be a long-term issue. We also found out that Travis Kelce was the actual backup emergency long snapper, which is funny. That Noah Gray had to do it because Travis Kelce had already taken his pads off and everything. Obviously, Harrison Bucker just fine, no issues there. It's still going to be fascinating to me, but we'll talk about this a little bit later. As far as the kickoff rules, the new kickoff rules, which they're still concerned about and still haven't necessarily nailed down, which is hilarious and get the kinks out of. But we'll see as we get closer to the season, certainly. King Mo did ask, when we're going to do some over-unders and full season predictions. So next week, we will be going live Tuesday night. The August 27th is that Tuesday. They will have to have their full 53-man by 4 p.m. on Tuesday. We'll probably have most, if not all, of the practice squad named by that night as well. So we'll do a full kind of roster review and then also, obviously, what happened in this preseason game coming up on Thursday. And then the week after, we'll be into, full prediction mode. We'll go through kind of our full season prediction. And then we'll also talk specifically about the Ravens on Thursday night football to open up the season September 5th. Looking forward to that game, certainly. But anything before we go ahead and get on out of here, guys?
Nothing too much. Oh, if you are looking bringing up King most points over and unders. FanDuel has some parlays right now. 4,000, I think QBs over 4,000 yards. You can put that in the parlay. I think you can do receivers as well at this point in time too.
It's
So
usually
go,
whatever the stat is, you got to do everybody in the same way. So you can
yeah,
pick 4 to 5 thousand yard receivers, 4 to 5 4,000 yard throwers. So
yeah.
I'll come up with some Chiefs. I have some good Chiefs props that I like, Mo. So I'll probably make like a graphic. I'll have some put out for everybody by the time we get to week one. So probably that week one episode, I'll have like a graphic of like my favorite season over and unders, and we can pick some for the year. But I think there's some good ones we can get some money on for sure.
A lot of betting content coming from CJ here on Kingdom Cast, and a part of Tell the Truth as well as we get into it certainly this upcoming season. But yeah, that's all we got for you guys today. Thankfully, to the NFL changing up the way that they do their NFL Plus, I'm looking forward to stay scheming this year and some of the cut ups that I'll be able to put together. So I'm gonna have a lot of fun with that tool, and looking forward to it. To
The
tell you,
update is nice.
it's very nice. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah.
Somehow I still don't see the all 22 for
About
the
time.
preseason game, which is still an issue, but it was a different conversation. But yeah, looking forward to it. But yeah, we got a lot of content coming for you guys. Certainly on Tell the Truth. But yeah, that's the first two preseason games done. Training camp in the books. We got one preseason game left. We will talk to you guys when the final 53-man roster is locked in for your defending back-to-back Super Bowl champions as they go for the three-peat. But for yours truly, DG, CJ, let's tell the truth, man. Peace out.